Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good. Well, my name, Dwayne Devonish for clarity, and this is my colleague, Dion Greenidge from the Department of Management Studies. Now, I must say first, we are not professing to be experts in IT. IT to me is probably still it, all right? But what I should say is that our personal encounter with the iPad is relatively recent. I think probably as far back or as near as early December last year, well, mid-December last year. And I think what happened was that I was on the internet searching for new ways that I can improve the classroom, experience. And I came across this iPad. And I said, iPad? I remember a student with this iPad thing. So I went to Promatech, which is one of the outlets in the Sheraton. And they were talking about this iPad 2, which is second generation iPad. So I called Dion. I said, Dion, boy, you hear about this iPad? I said, yeah, boy, we got to get this iPad. So Dion, I called Dion. So it was really something it was humorous at first. But then when we actually purchased the iPad, we saw that there was so much detail and utility that, we really decided when Pat contacted us first, she wanted us to talk about the iPad. I said, oh, dear, well, December is like 6 months, but we had the passion to do it. So we decided to do this presentation for the benefit of you all with your iPads or the potential to buy iPads. So we hope it's enjoyable. In fact, Thursday we have a teaching session, a training session in terms of showing you exactly what the iPad does and how to do what you're going to see, what we're going to present to you on that particular day. But today is really talking about our experiences with iPad. So it's not too fancy today. So I know probably a lot of people are waiting to see all the graphics and so on, but we will give you a snapshot thanks to Greenidge here. Now, taking the iPad to class at UV. Now, I always say that the first thing you always got to remember is that if you got to take the iPad to class, you have to have an iPad. So let me show you. Now, this is the traditional, well, I would say the second generation iPad. You can see carefully how it looks.
64 gigabytes.
Right. Now, yeah, somebody tell me don't drop it. That would be terrible. Now, the iPad is currently in its third generation, right? We have the iPad 3. Now, the iPad 2, nevertheless, can do wonders for you, right? So this was bought in mid-December. Now, something about the iPad, however, that I need to educate you on, as Dion just reminded me, the iPad has different storage sizes. Now, bear in mind that the iPad is an Apple product. It's not, I would say, a replacement for laptop. By no means. It's not a replacement. Because the iPad, if you look at it carefully, does not have much outlets for USB port, for example, USB devices. So there's no USB outlets. So you're wondering, how exactly do I get data on this device? Now, that's not the function of the device. Now, the iPad has a different operating system from the Microsoft, as you know, the Vista and the Windows 7. And you can't store information on an iPad the same way that you can store information on a simple laptop or netbook, all right? Much of the storage on the iPad is hosted by iCloud technology, which really stores things, as they say, over, I'm not an IT expert, but over the space of IT, what you call it, I guess, the cyberspace, as they call it. So what happens is that when you download what you call something called an application or app for short, much of the storage is done within the app space itself. And I'm going to talk about some of those things that can help in teaching and learning. Now, I have here, there are 3 storage sizes I was mentioning earlier. There's the 16 gigabyte, and we know about storage size, I believe, at the minimum. 16 gigabyte, we have the 32 gigabytes and 64 gigabytes. Clearly, the bigger storage sizes will be used for people who want a lot more apps or data to run on their iPad. And then there are 2 versions of internet accessibility options of the iPad. You have the Wi-Fi, which is what this is, the Wi-Fi option. Now, this Wi-Fi option for iPad is one where you have to be close to a hotspot. And you connect onto that hotspot. Obviously, if it's a security hotspot, then you have to put in your password. If it's like the campus area, which is open, you just connect. And you have internet access. The 3G, which is in the second generation, iPad 2, or you have the 4G, which is in the third generation, which is the iPad 3, which is the recent iPad that came out now, you can actually have something called a micro SIM, which you can go to any of your telecommunications provider like Lime or Digicel, and they insert it into a slot at the side of the iPad, and it has localized internet access. So you can actually have internet without being close to a hotspot. So now, of course, the implications would be prepaid, postpaid. So then you're having an extra bill there at the end of the month, right? Depending if you do prepaid or postpaid packages with Lime or Digicel. I don't have roughly on the top of my head, but I can remember, I think Lime, yeah, $50 a month. $59 a month for the postpaid package. And of course, this is based on the same parallel to telephone use. So if you go over your minutes, or you're in this case, is a data SIM. So if you go over the particular usage, then you're charged at 50 cents a megabyte. So you've got to be careful. For those who are IT savvy, you know what that means. I remember having a bill about $370 because I'm on this 3G and all, watching Netflix and everything, and I forget I'm streaming on my 4G. So with the 4G, ensure that if you are near a hotspot, you connect to the Wi-Fi so it releases the pressure from the 3G or the 4G internet connection. But what I really want to get to is that, yes, you have to have your iPad. This session is not to talk about the purchasing the iPad, but yes. And obviously to advertise that the bookstore is actually bringing in the iPads, and you can put it on your book grant. So there's not much limitation that you have to access the iPad, outside the fact that you have to be somewhat IT savvy to play with it. Now, the next feature that we have to have, so you have to have iPad. Of course, one of the crucial devices that you need, and this is going into the classroom now. When you're going into the classroom, you want to project what's on your iPad to your students. Now, I come in here, I can see what I have here, but I want this screen, the same way I want a laptop screen to be projected here. How do I get this onto a projector so that everyone can see? Now, as you know, the iPad doesn't have any slots for VGA connection cable. Thanks to Apple and Promotech. I don't have shares in the company, but I believe that you also can buy this from Mannings and popular IT stores as well. Pardon? Right, the bookshop brings it in. Yes, good advertising. Now, what you do is that you basically plug this into what you call a dock port, right? And this port is connected to this device, and you can see it has a female end, so that you can have the VGA male end go into the actual device, and there's no the beautiful thing about there's no FN, F5, and all those kind of connections you do for laptop. It is an automatic show in probably 5 to 10 seconds. It comes up on the screen. And we can do many of these items and training issues at the training seminar. So I'm not going to really do that now. In fact, we can probably have a snapshot of it. So we have, this is called, oh yeah, by the way, this is called a VGA dock connector. It's about $100 from, around $100, $150 from any popular stores in IT like Promotech. We have the bookstore bringing them in. Now, of course, we have to have our projector. So once we have our cable connect, we connect to our projector, which our lovely EMS provides for us, and on timer, should I mention. Now, what benefits compared with an ordinary laptop netbook connecting my iPad, and you're telling me, Devonish, that this iPad doesn't have the capacity to store information, like how I can store my PowerPoint files and PDF files so I can show my students my images. How then, what is the utility? Now, here are some of the interesting utility options. Now, clearly, the iPad shows videos and awesome graphics from various sources that even the laptop, Microsoft products can't really show. For example, I mean, yes, we're familiar with the YouTube, which can be shown from either or laptops or iPads. But the beautiful thing about the iPad is that it has an icon, a shortcut icon, which goes directly to YouTube. And if you have Wi-Fi access or 4G internet access, you can stream videos over into the screen for students can see. And then you can bypass that and go straight back to your PowerPoint. Now, I should say one of the key limitations of the iPad is that it doesn't allow multitasking, as you would have for a laptop, where you will probably have multiple files open at the same time. You have to close the home screen and then go back into another function or application. And that becomes a limitation. But nevertheless, you have videos. There are particular apps. We're going to talk about apps very soon. But these apps can give you an enriched classroom where, for example, I am teaching stats for management. I can show diagrams with the iPad based on an app called Stats App, perhaps, or Stats Graph, because there's so many providers of apps nowadays. You can show it up, and I can do a graph. Now, I'm doing it here, putting my finger, and it has a whiteboard coming up on the iPad. It's beautiful. And I can even record those lectures and so on. Yeah. Yeah, what Greenidge was telling me, he will hook up the iPad and show some of these features to you. But so as he hook up, I'm going to just talk about the other features. Now, we have the issue. Now, we present normally when we have our computers with PowerPoint, which is a Microsoft product. And then we have Word, Microsoft Word. And then we have what? Microsoft Excel. So there's one thing that, oh yeah, this is somebody streaming the videos here.
I can explain this one. Now, basically, when I was teaching perception in my OB course, I started the lecture with this video. Princess, can you hear? Yeah. No.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by.
So basically, that's YouTube. So that's how we use YouTube.
And remember, this is direct access from the desk screen of iPad. You don't have to go look for youtube.com. It's right there.
Right here, right. Everybody ready to move on to the next one? Okay. Yeah. So he's going to talk about the statistics one.
And this is the actual desktop, so you can see the projection done very. Yeah.
So depending on what we're teaching, I think, for example, I could do it better when we do regression, which is professor. So this was the last thing I was doing. So then we can, so if we wanted to pick up like a formula for regression or so on, you know, we can do that using these apps too. So linear regression, for example, and I have that there. So I can use this to help teach as well, right?
It's excellent. Right, this is actually this is the desk screen of the iPad too. Now, just to let you know how these apps are obtained. Yeah, most of these apps are purchase apps. I mean, as I mentioned, when you purchase the iPad, it comes with default apps already, like the YouTube and so on, and Mail app and so forth. But you have to connect to something called the iTunes Apple Store, which is a gated shopping community that Apple would provide for iPad and iPhone users to purchase and download apps directly onto the iPad. So it's not where you had hardware, like how you normally buy CDs and install. It's totally electronic. So the electronic download onto your iPad. And this is where you can get all of your wonderful applications from education. You have even entertainment, Netflix, for example. You have Facebook. There's Skype. There's Magic Jack, where you can copy. I was calling my mother overseas and so on for Mother's Day. So all of these are a lot of functions that iPad can really endorse. Now, one of the things I want to talk about, though, is as lecturers, we know that we are familiar with our Microsoft Excel, our Microsoft Word, and our Microsoft PowerPoint, yes. Now, of course, those are Microsoft products. So we have parallel products. I say we, if I own Apple. But Apple has parallel products called the iWork suite. iWork suite, in terms of the products they provide, there's something called Pages, which is the alternative or the sister to the Microsoft Office Word. And then you have, well, this is Pages here. The beautiful thing about this is that you can open then Microsoft documents, Word documents are already saved, without any much transition or manipulation. And you can type and save Pages documents as Microsoft Word documents, which then you can shuffle back onto your computer if anything. So it's always that you can do a backward and forward shift. Now, this is Pages, so this is just a snapshot. Let's see the Keynote. Keynote is the PowerPoint alternative now. Right, yeah, I want Mr. Greenidge hit this one here.
Now, with the Keynote, what I found is that the students will come after class and they will say, they like the graphics. They say it looks cleaner to them, right? Because I try different animations and so on. And in fact, what I found is that when students actually would have presentations, those who had iPads came to class with their iPad. So I had to lend them my connector because they thought you could just hook it together. So I had to lend them my connector. They did a better job than me most of the time in terms of the animation. That was one thing. So I always had to be saying to them, well, better than mine, you know, because some days my timing, because I timed them. So I would have timed the animation when I want something to come in, when I want it to leave the screen, taking up, because it takes time. So I would have probably practiced, like, on here, we have also voice, where we can record ourselves and our lecture as it's going. So I will probably be doing the lecture as I'm going through. So to see if I get the timings right for when things will come in or when things will drop. Or no. But what I did not factor in was the fact that sometimes students stop for questions. so then you'll see the things just going off and then have to say, oh shoot, come back, right? So remember that, right? So it wasn't all that practical, but it still worked nicely because, you know, the comments, everyone was liking it and so on. And they were paying attention, and I was impressed with the fact they were actually bringing their iPads to class now. You know, they were actually bringing iPads, and students actually try doing presentations with their iPads because the graphics look, you know, the animation, different in terms of like the PowerPoint. In fact, when our team, full team, just in terms of our students in management studies, we just won the case analysis competition for the second year straight. What we did, the students, they used my iPad and we used a map and get all the graphics in and so on and so forth. So we were hard to beat. Right. So basically, you can see some things that get show off, and students like to see those little fancy things happening as the thing gets coming through. And then, you try different things. And then when we got to that's class activity, so you saw how the confetti come up there and singles activity and so on. So different little things that we try to keep them. So what I found is that if they're not listening to me, that at least they're looking to see what's coming next and how the slide is going to turn next, right? So that was good.
So that's what you have as Keynote. So Keynote is an app that you can purchase from the iPad store, and it gives you the same PowerPoint feel. And again, it can open PowerPoint presentations or save those Keynote presentations you develop on the iPad back as PowerPoint. So you have that option for the iPad. It's beautiful. Now, one of the key things is now, how do I get my information onto the iPad? Because there's no USB port, so how do I get my presentations? Now, one simple option is to mail it to yourself, and the iPad has a mail option where you can have your closest mail, your most personal mail, at shortcut value. So this is his personal mail here. When he mails it to himself, he can then download it as an attachment onto his iPad, his Keynote software application. Now, the thing about, you can't save it on the iPad, but you save it within the app space. So you have to open the app to get the storage of your different files and so on. So if you're going to save Pages or Microsoft Office Word files, you save it within the app. So you have to open the app to see where those files are. But there's no folder that you can create on the iPad space to put in things. It doesn't operate like a computer. Now,
but you can create folders within the space.
Right. Now, you can create what you call app folders, which can store apps and cut down much of the space that you take up when you download many apps, for example. Right, and this is all his saved files. Now, this is in Keynote. This is not virtually on the iPad per se. It uses up the space, but it's still here in the Keynote local access. So that's where you can access your Keynote or PowerPoint files. Remember, Keynote is the name that you give for the PowerPoint. Pages for Microsoft Office, Word, and then the Excel, you have Numbers, which is the term that they use for the Apple product conversion. Now, how then do we get these files on? Now, I believe some of y'all or most of y'all are familiar with the Dropbox software. Now, Dropbox is one of those interesting software packages that allow you to upload files into a cyberspace, and you can have it as a folder onto your computer. And any file you put in this folder would be shared across computers that have the same Dropbox. So let's say I am in Spain, and I have a different computer operating in Spain, and my grandmother in Barbados, and I say, oh, I forgot a file home. I can tell my grandmother, copy and paste the file at home into my Dropbox folder, on the desktop perhaps, and then that file shows up because it's sharing. So it's online sharing, and I can see that folder in my Dropbox. It's beautiful. So you can actually store your hard drive on the Dropbox and access it anywhere in the world once you have a computer. And you don't have to have a computer with Dropbox. You can go on the internet, dropbox.com. You have your account access and password like a Hotmail, and you can see all of your folders in the Dropbox. Now the iPad has a Dropbox app then. So that means if you put the Dropbox information in the Dropbox on your computer, you can pull it up from your iPad. So it's almost like your iPad is like a laptop now, because it has all your files. Or this is eternally his hard drive on the iPad from his computer home. So if somebody had to place information at home, his home in Black Rock, onto the Dropbox, he's going to sit here on the iPad. So that's how he can bring in his now PowerPoint files and so on. So when he updates his files, he just put it in the Dropbox on the laptop, and then he can go to class with his iPad and just pull it up. Because then from Dropbox, you upload it into whatever package, Keynote or Pages, depending on the program you're presenting. And this is beautiful. This is course outline and so on. So you can see that the iPad is not restricted. But I have to contest that you cannot use it as a replacement. I would use it more as a supplement because there's certain limitations I mentioned. Now, one of the other limitations is that iPad uses Safari as one of the web hosting, whereas, Microsoft also uses the Internet Explorer, you got the Mozilla and so on. Now, you do have apps that you can download that will give you alternative web hosting and so on. But the problem with some of these apps is that it doesn't support Flash. So if you want to play like what we call Flash videos, like the Adobe Flash videos and so on, that becomes a problem. Now, this is the Safari.
Ready? Watch it now, right? I forgot to tell you about this one.
Okay, he got one that we are finding secrets by the day, so he's telling me a secret.
To get the Flash, you got to download Photon, because it uses a lot of football.
Okay, so we have a Flash called Photon app, where you can actually watch football, as he's saying, and probably some basketball, the Heats and so on. Yeah. Because naturally, iPad doesn't support Flash, but it has what you call apps that would fill in.
You see this sign here? That's the Flash sign. So you just do that, and then that takes it into Flash websites.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Right, so you can watch all your... Yes. Huh? It's called Photon. P-H-O-T-O-N. Photo with an N.
Right, I get all of my sports and everything interesting, right? So I got it on the go. From cricket back down. Yeah. Yeah,
Great session like that. Yeah, and you have the ESPN, and not to mention the Netflix and so forth. But there's also another part of the iPad in terms of calling, which is still we still talking about teaching and learning. We don't want to give it too much on entertainment, but the texting, you can actually text free, which is almost a bypass the line we did yourself. But you can actually text. Like I have a text icon here. I can text anyone here in this room. Once I have the phone number, it's going to come up with probably a US number or so on. Some of how the Magic Jet operates, but of course there's no charge. So there's so much that you can really pull from the iPad, and I think we're going to leave that much for Thursday when we have that training seminar. I think it's about 2 or 3 hours, which can really do a lot. But oh yes, when it comes to grades, you can enter grades from the iPad.
I did that as well.
Yeah, you did that right. You're right. So you can enter from Banner. You can go into your Banner with the iPad, and you put in all your grades nicely, and you can now look, watch this, Dion. Push the screen so you can. If you push the screen out with your fingers, you can zoom in. So the zoom is wonderful. Look at that. So you can show students things like, okay, this is your grades here, come back. And you can, if you squeeze in your finger, so of course it has the interactive screen, as we know about that function on the touch screen iPads. So this is what you call the Safari Internet. And by the way, don't worry about viruses. I think you're all familiar with Apple products, and when it comes to viruses and so on, that's non-existent. So you don't have to worry about the iPad catching any virus. So if you go on any undesirable site, God forbid, you don't have to worry. But yes, for teaching and learning is important.
Yeah, it's actually important because another thing that I found, for example, in class, in terms of time, for me, it is good in terms of time, in terms of being effective, because when I get to class, it's easy to set up. So if I'm running a bit late, which is sometimes usually, it saves time. So I guess, and I'm ready to go. And even navigating the websites, for example, when I want to teach students like how to go and search for journal articles, into UE website quickly. So for me, that's one of the essential things about it, time cutting. I mean, it's very effective in the classroom because you don't have to wait till a website actually downloads. Things are quicker. Everything is just there, moving, and movies are there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
We have the
All that
Netflix
teaching-
for teaching and learning.
All that teaching and learning. In fact, Dwayne did not tell you, but you can create your own videos with your video apps.
Oh yes, you have your video apps.
You have your video apps as well, right? With that you can store videos and whatever.
Very good. You
And
can
then
actually, because of the
we have our movie with Netflix, you know, if we want to. In fact, in my graduate course that I teach, one of the assignments is that students have to watch a movie, and they do a presentation, applying leadership movie theories to that movie, because all the movies are based on work settings. So you see, we use it to teach.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And remember, there was also sessions where, as I said, with the whiteboard, you can actually, because the iPad has a camera by at the top, there's a camera, a megapixel camera that you can actually look at yourself and tape your lectures, or even turn the camera the other side, because two-way, and tape lectures and so on. And you can put that onto e-learning or whatever. It's wonderful.
And there are podcast apps as well. So those of you who want to do podcasting, there are podcast apps as well.
And these will be all discussed in the training seminar for sure. One of the things too I want to talk about, because one of the things you're probably considering is, okay, I have this iPad, do I have to stay in front of this iPad? What about the remote access? Like, normally you're familiar with the laptops. You have this remote that you can control at any point where you can control your PowerPoint. Now with the iPad, how you can work it is that, this is one option. You can have your traditional laptop and you can use the iPad as a remote. So as you talk with your iPad, you're just playing around like this here, and everything is moving around here. But what's happening is remotely controlling the laptop, which then is changing the PowerPoint. You see what's happening? Okay, I guess it's all part of the training seminar. Okay, imagine the iPad can serve as a remote that controls, now your PowerPoint is in the laptop here. The iPad can synchronize with your computer then to make remote changes, meaning that I'm here walking, and as I talk to you, my PowerPoint changes, and I'm moving it on the iPad. So there's a remote link.
Or you can you can get
there's an app,
your computer as well.
There's an app. Sorry, it's an app. Sorry, these things are all run by apps. Of course. No, it doesn't have to be a Mac laptop. Any laptop. It can synchronize. And this, if you come to that training session, we're advertising it now, you will learn all about these things. It's just that the time won't permit now. And the room, sorry. We can see if we can get one of those. We can probably project it as a hologram. But another thing too, that's one option. The second option is if you have your iPhone. As you know, iPhone is almost the baby to the iPad. You can download an app that synchronizes with the iPad. And forget about the laptop now. You can control the iPad remotely with your iPhone as a remote. So as you play around your iPhone, the students say, what's going on here? The iPad is moving. Well, we know about that technology, moving as it would normally do.
I don't forget, you can also control your computer with.
Oh yes, there's a function that Dion remind me of called Log Me In. A function, when I say a function, really application, an app. Log Me In, I think most IT people are familiar with, where you can, where you usually call Dell, and Dell say, all right, let me access the computer, and they will access the computer. You see all your things moving around? You can do that. I can stay from home. I can stay here. And from home, I can control my computer. Once it's on, listen carefully, with my iPad. Now what happens on my iPad, the screen would change to my screen at home. Yes. And my niece would tell me, wait, Dwayne, the mouse moving by itself, what's going on? And I press in the mouse, and I said, all right, let me access my folder, email it to myself, and I got it here on my iPad. Or I put it in my Dropbox myself. Wow. That's beautiful. Anywhere in the world, I can remotely access my computer then to turn it off or turn it on, in most cases, or to manipulate files on my desktop. But the computer has to be home as a requirement. It has to be, on the internet, of course. But I think there are functions where you can actually turn on the computers. I'm not familiar yet with the IT power in it. Wake up online, right, where you can actually wake up the computer and access your files and so on. So it's beautiful. All right? I don't know if Dion has any final things to say. Right, so to just wrap up, the iPad is the way to go. Right? Yeah. We're getting a lot of money. If you buy more iPads, we get more money. Or you can just give us your credit card numbers, and we will order iPads for you. But seriously, we've gained much in using the iPad in classrooms, and we will continue to endorse and support staff to use it, and you will see and enjoy the richness of it. Yeah. Thank you.
And I think one of the biggest things for us is that the students appreciate it, and they're commenting, they came to you and they said, I like it.